Let's talk right now about NHS strike action. Sam Armstrong is still joins me. Before we go to our next guest, just very briefly from you, do you expect that this strike that called by the British Medical Association of Resident Doctors, 25th July, 5 days, do you think that strike will go ahead, or do you think that Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, will either pay them the 29% they've asked for or talk them down from that pay demand?
Well, I hope he can, because the absolute unavoidable consequence of this many doctors walking out for this long is that patients will die.
Yep.
And the blood of those patients is, as far as I'm concerned, on the hands of the union leaders. Resident doctors, junior doctors, they are junior doctors.
Some of them are very experienced.
So, look, they're at the junior end of their career, are paid comparatively well. They have excellent career prospects. They've just had a bumper pay deal. To come back a year later, try the same stunt again with a Labour government, shows to me that they are out of control, have been taken over by a far left faction, and it needs to stop.
OK, well, let's talk to Martin Gower about this. He's a former NHS Trust chairman. Very good morning to you, Martin.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much. Well, what's your answer to that? Do you think that Wes Street is going to be able to talk them down, or do you think sort of the government criticising them and pointing out you only had 55% of those who took part, members of the BMA, who actually took part in this ballot, and then 90% of those voted to strike? You don't have the remit for it. You don't have the mandate for it, they're saying.
Well, there's truth in that, obviously. My question is, I think that Wes Streeting is planning to have some negotiating meeting with the BMA this week. But I think we're in a situation where the government in general, their negotiating skills are not exactly highly rated.
No, let's get Lord Herber to do it over Chagos as well.
well, everything. Macron, you know.
Yeah.
I think we're into a situation where they're going to be a soft touch.
Well, they seem to think by giving, was it 22% last July to doctors, they'd go away and I think the day after they took that pay deal, they said we're going to get into talks about getting the next tranche of money.
This is only the start, they said, and we have the same thing, of course, with the Royal College of Nursing. Who
understandably are a bit peeved that they took a much smaller pay rise. And then the doctors are coming back for more. Nurses are going to come back for more, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the RCN are not quite as militant, I think, as the British Medical Association, rather pompously called that. I think they should be called the National Union of Doctors.
Yes.
NUD, you know, that would more accurately describe what they do. And yes, I mean, Wes Streeting is right in the sense that less than half of the doctors have voted to strike. I'm slightly baffled by it all, in the sense that all the clips I see of striking doctors, they seem to be thoroughly enjoying what they're doing. It all looks like jolly good fun. They're all laughing and waving their placards as if they're, you know, on a pride march or something. but it's really, really strange. I just think, and behind all this is my thing about leadership. I think they're getting their leadership from their union.
Well, the leadership is incredibly. I mean, look, you know, we've seen this a lot has happened. The National Education Union for teachers as well. The BMA, they've been taken over by sort of basically the hard left. Their aim in life is to strike, bring down the government, etc., etc. It's not about doctors, you know, paying conditions so much anymore, is it?
Well, I don't think it is. I think it is about greed, though. I mean, let's be absolutely frank. And any sort of variation in what doctors do, whether they're junior doctors or not, immediately the BMA putting in their hands out and say, yes, of course we'll work every other Saturday. Now, how much are you going to reward us for that? You know, there's a kind of quite a greedy approach. And I think that's from a position of strength, because let's be honest, if doctors go on strike, as Sam just said, you know, patients are going to suffer.
Yeah, and that's the reality.
And possibly even die.
But when doctors, when they say that they're 29% worse off than they were back in 2010, again, it depends if you use RPI or CPI, then they'd be 4.5% worse off. But most people in this country are worse off because we've seen inflation and we've seen all these other problems that people have had over the austerity years, and then lockdown and Ukraine and energy prices. So a lot of people are in the same boat. But it is interesting that often doctors are talking about, they compare to a time when, before we had the Working Time Directive, the EU Working Time Directive, which massively cut their hours. So they used to have limited hours, and then they'd have bonus shifts. They'd work a lot extra hours and get more money. But they're comparing their base salary now with that, which is not comparing like with like.
No, it's definitely not. And I think the odd thing about it all too is that the latest legislation being introduced by the government about workers' rights is going to make it easier for everybody to strike,
Yes.
even on smaller percentages of their workforce.
It's no longer having that 50% base threshold, which again, and then the government's saying, but 55% isn't enough. But they think the 50% is too much. I mean, the hypocrisy is rank, isn't it? Now, I've been very remiss on this because I've left only like 40 seconds of this, but MMR, very, very, very
Yes.
important. It is absolutely one of the safest injections people can have. My daughter's MMR, and I wouldn't have dreamt for not being. Lots and lots of people now are not giving their kid those absolutely vital childhood jabs. And we have seen a second child in a decade in this country dying of measles. We've seen outbreaks of measles on the continent as well because so few people are now getting their children jabbed. What do we do about it? And whose fault is it? Really briefly, Martin, sorry for that.
Well, obviously, GP surgeries should really, I was going to say, harass their lists to get their kids. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's very clear that certain ethnic minorities have a far lower uptake on MMR vaccines. Now, we don't know about the current things in Alderhay Hospital. Rightly, the children's background has been protected. But I do think there is an issue there too.
Yeah, absolutely. But for instance, in Black Afro-Caribbean groups are far, far less likely to have their kids MMR, and therefore their kids are more at risk, but also put other kids at risk too. Martin Gower, thank you for that.